Hello, and thank you for joining us for today's Sunday live ministry. Join today with Samantha Consciously. Thank you so much for being here today, Samantha.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's dive right in with our opening prayer. And for us, it is getting into the energies, embodying the spirit, and syncing up your frequencies with the divine. So do whatever feels called for you. But for me, that is an aligned spine. Today, we ask the divine to join us in this conversation, to illuminate our minds and connect us with the Christ. The Christ is an actual layer of reality that can permeate our entire beings. Let that sink into you now and work into your DNA to upgrade your DNA so that our bodies can match our spirits and our minds join us in this conversation as we use our thoughts to sink in to this whole spirit where we come alive quite literally in the name of Christ.
So it is, yeah, beautifully said. That
Absolutely.
that did invoke some feelings within me actually when I heard that. I felt this like kind of golden light come into me, and the words that were kind of resonating throughout my being were the truth of Christ, and that's what really hit me when you were talking about the embodiment of it. And it feels almost like Christ is this truth frequency. And when we embody it, we're more aligned with who we really are.
100%, especially on a soul level. And the soul really should be the leader when you're trying.
Oh, we've lost you, Dyanna, already. So yeah, just from what Dyanna was saying, I think, oh, you're back, gone. So we lost you. You went the soul.
You want the soul to be the leader, and the mind and the body will follow. And part of our ascension journey will be our DNA itself upgrading. And that is how we will see a new world, because we will have fresh eyes to see with, because our actual DNA is. And when we allow that to integrate within our being, you just make the whole circuit system work coherently in a spiritual sense. And Christ is the best one to dive into because it's the purest. It is full trust. It doesn't have an agenda. It just is.
Yeah, absolutely. I really liked that what you were talking about, the full trust as well. Because when you're in your truth, you're also in full trust because there is no lie there. And that's I think what can happen with more, I mean, I'm not going against organized religions, but when you're putting your power outside yourself and you're going to a place of worship and you're relying on somebody else to tell you what to think and you're not connecting actually within you, I think that's when the distortions can come in and you move out of that true Christ alignment.
100%. Absolutely. Because that's exactly it. And there's so many different entities and deities and all these things we can work with. And some of them might help us, some of them might not. But even the ones that help us, they're all individuated people just like us, but without bodies that we know of in this earth. They could have bodies somewhere else. And they have, just like we do, we all have our own narratives and our own stories that we want to live out. And sometimes we can do favors for other people, but if you're not aligned in the purest of pure Christ, that's why Christ talks about service, because the Christ service is pure. It's service for service sake. It has no agenda. It just wants to serve, which I feel like you don't see that in the churches so much. They try, but starts to twist the message. Service and life in Christ is the purest form that we have found on this earth, to just be in pure alignment without an agenda.
Yeah, and that is the thing, isn't it? It's when you're doing something from a place of kind of love and giving and you're not expecting anything in return. And I'm not saying that we need to be martyrs or self-sacrificial. I think it's looking at the intention behind the reasons that we do things. And like you said, that Christ light is so pure and so true, that it's going to put you in your own alignment, basically. And what I did want to touch on, Diana, I know we had a chat about that post earlier that I shared on X, and it made some really interesting kind of footnotes that we're going to touch on. And I think one of the things is that Christ is like the solar logos, which is like this, like you said, this golden pure light information, and it's a living, breathing embodiment, you know, when we bring it into us. And that when we translate that into service, it's the living, breathing embodiment of the Christ light, because whatever we're doing, we're bringing that into physicality. And that's why we do, you know, you help your neighbor, you speak good words, you're kind, you're uplifting, you're caring, you turn the other cheek, not in a self-deprecating way, you know, or in, you know, a way that's going to hurt you, but you're not basically reactive. And when we're doing this, this is how we embody that love frequency, that Christ frequency, this like golden solar illumination, you know?
100%. I completely agree. And let's dive into this Twitter thread, because it's very Gnostic. It's breaking down the Gnostics, but I like the language it uses. And those who've been following me for a long time know I went through the Gnostic Gospels once upon a time. Not all of them, because I lost touch with what they're trying to say, because there's a lot of stuff put in. But this tweet, this brought it all through in its purest form, bringing out the deepest truths that we truly do need to know. So let's start it out here. We have, if you can't read it on screen, Christ is not a man who is coming to save you. Christ is a hyperdimensional code imprinted within your soul, waiting to be remembered. The word religion is derived from the Latin word religare, or religare, however you want to say that, which means to bind. Christ did not come to bind, but to liberate. And you can see here, and we do see a lot where is the six-pointed star good or bad, Metatronic demiurge. And we have Sophia here as well, the counter signal to the matrix. And this is all thanks to this Twitter account here, Hidden Amaraka, thrice greatest. Well, we know who that is, Thoth. And there is very, very powerful information found in that stream as well. So the Christos is the anointed light, the radiant blueprint of divine order from the Ein Sof. And I also used to be a Kabbalist, and Ein Sof is the second layer down in the way the tree comes down to emanate. So Christ is a virus, and we know that Christ, we already discovered that Christ is that layer right before the God layer. And Christ is a virus in the demiurgic construct, the Logos made flesh, the Logos in the Word. The Word is not speech, but a frequency, the original ripple from the great deep. So what are your thoughts on that, Samantha? Because you're the one who brought this to our attention.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing is, like you said, that the Thruff kind of linkage there. I've seen something as well. I think this is the thing with the Christ light. It isn't just Christian. And I know you guys have talked about that before, but it goes, you know, back, you know, to even Egyptian mysticism. And that this is the thing, isn't it? It all kind of crosses over. So I think the point that I'm trying to make very round the houses is that it really is this frequency. It's this thing that we hold within us. And you were talking about the upgrades and the DNA. I literally feel like it's this golden light within our DNA. He does go on to talk about this logos, which is obviously the word of God, isn't it? But not like a spoken word. It's the frequency. It's the collapsing of the wave, the particle into the wave, basically. And when we bring that into physicality, and I think this is what it's all about, anchoring it in and being that middle pillar. Oh, we've lost you, Dyanna, you've gone. So yeah, just to elaborate a little bit further on that. Oh, you're back. Did you hear that, or did it go? Oh, you mic, Dyanna, you're muted.
And I'm mic'd. What was your last sentence there?
Yeah, so it was just saying it's this middle pillar, basically. It's the frequency, the logos, the condensing of that wave into a particle. Because it's a spoken word, isn't it? It's the frequency of God. It's the creational aspect.
100%. And when we find alignment, this like goes hand in hand with manifestation. When we find alignment, we collapse the wave into a particle. We ourselves do that. And this is why, like, ancient occult wisdom was still teaching you to get into that full bodied alignment. And in the deepest truths, it was all just bringing out the self, bringing out your deepest core truths, which all of us on our spiritual journeys have discovered, getting rid of that base level ego that the sleepers use. That's gone or morphed into something new. And it goes beyond ego at this point, where you realize, because 95% subconscious, that you have so many hidden layers within yourself that need to be dug out, that need to be reintegrated, that need to just be seen. A lot of the time, it just needs to be seen. And you need to be aware of your own life, your past traumas, all these variables, subconscious programmings that come in. There are so many things that try to keep us in the loops, that try to keep us away from our truest core nature. Because that truest core nature, that is Christ, though it is extremely powerful, it does not force. It is the most gentle of energy that can ironically be the most powerful of energy. But when you choose to be in alignment with us, and there's certain moments that probably a lot of us have experienced, myself included, where when we are in our lowest of the low, that energy flooded on top of us like a great fire to save us. But that's because you get yourself to such a low part, a low place, that you just completely surrender everything else and just almost sometimes just give up. You didn't even intend. I know in one of my situations, didn't even intend for God to swoop in and save me. But because I had surrendered so deeply to every aspect of myself, the Christ came upon me and lifted me up and literally got me out of the situation in a completely like supernatural situation, like in the way it played out. It was remarkable. And this is possible for us all. And it requires that surrender to bring on that alignment that puts us into the coherence of that higher nature, the Logos, the Christ, that just makes everything in this world ascended and magical.
Yeah, I love that you're saying about the surrender, because it is, isn't it? It's the blocks and resistance that we've got within us and these programs. And again, going back to kind of the control structures of religion and where the origins of this Christ consciousness kind of came from. You know, it's outside of time essentially, and that's the thing. The thing that's blocking us is the human experience and the trauma and the things that we've come in to navigate, basically. And when you reach a point, and this is another reason for the nature of suffering, in my opinion, when you go through this kind of these trials and tribulations, they do shape you, but they also give you the alchemical fire, and you're able to go into that experience and find a deeper meaning to what's going on and allow that Christ light to come in. I think the more we can clear ourselves, the more we can give up the resistance. And that's the thing, isn't it? It's the resistance that holds us back. That's what causes the suffering. And that's kind of what causes the friction that within our lives. But it's a double-edged sword, because in one hand it's difficult, and in the other it brings us closer to who we really are.
100%. And there's so many blocks within us. Like I could say at the point in my journey, like once upon a time, my behavior was obvious and I knew there was things I needed to fix. And I was like, woe is me. And I didn't want to fix it. And every time I would go through and fix something, there was this big process of wait, I don't want to, but I would. And it was just like that for a lot of years, the alchemical process. But now I'm to the point where I still do have blocks, but they're so deep that I'm unaware of them. I don't even know what they are. And a lot of the time I get myself into an energetic space, like your meditative space, your middle pillar space, the God spark space, and it can fix these blocks. A lot of the time, our conversations, Sam, just back and forth. And like when I mentioned my shaman, that's Samantha. And when we do like these workings that I just love, it does something. And I don't even know what it's clearing up now because I'm going in blind, because everything that was a conscious issue has more or less been handled, and I'm more or less aware, like, because there's so much subconscious behavior that we could want to fix and try to fix, but it's still, because it's so deep seated into us, it can take a long time. But awareness is key. But when you can't be aware, you just have to surrender and allow it to take its toll on you in a good way. Let it do its work. And that takes a deep, deep, deep surrendering that I can just keep repeating the word, but really it's something that you have to feel into to truly embody.
Yeah, it is. And it's that again, going back to the trust. And what you do by doing that is you allow yourself to unfold, because we all have these ideas, whether it's books or not, whether it's coming from a place of trauma or not. We cannot fully expand our mind to all the wonders that could possibly unfold, or the grandest of plans, that's been designed here. And that's, we can go into being, is that from good, or is it the demiurge? Because that's the two and forth that I go through sometimes. I don't know if you're the same, Dyanna, but I just think, even if it is made by the demiurge, and this experience that we're having is this kind of like cyclical recycling of the soul, there's a purpose for it, and there's still a divine light in there, and I think it's getting to the core center of why we're here. I think that's what we are actually trying to find. And I think part of that is the Christ light, it's bringing that in, and that's helping us to unfold with trust and surrender to the difficulties, in our lives, basically. Oh, we've lost you again, Dyanna. Did you hear that, or did we lose you?
I missed the end of it again. What was the last sentence?
Yeah, so it was just saying basically it's just it's the trust and unfolding, because there are higher entities that are working with us. We've got angels, we've got guides, we've got all these other things that are all working with us and want us to reach that Christ light, because essentially that's what it's going to do, isn't it? It's leading us to ascension. And that's, even if we look at this place that we're living in right now, as an extension of the demiurge, the playground of the demiurge, we're here to learn and evolve and traverse those kind of mind traps, I'm going to say, that we all find ourselves in. And it's the Christ light that helps us do that.
100%. And what I'll say to that, because you were saying earlier about, like, is it the demiurge and what could it be that's messing with me, kind of thing. Well, I've gone to the point, and it's part of, I think, my mission. And because I preach and I teach that the all is mind, I am the totality of God. I hold the entirety of the universe and whatever's beyond it within my being. It is within me, in my chakra systems, my energy systems. I am the totality of everything. So, regardless of what extra things are trying to get into you, even the Christ light, even extra good gods, they're all a part of you. So, especially when you're dealing with something negative, like what could be attacking me, what is happening, it would have a piece within you that it is able to attach within. We do actually have to give permission for everything that's done to us, good or bad. So if negative thoughts are coming in, and if negative things are coming in, this is why we want to be sovereign and know thyself, because it doesn't matter, because it can seem overwhelming. Oh, what, I have to battle the demiurge? Oh, what, I need to overcome this ancient being? No, you need to overcome the self. The self is all you have to work within, and to tease that out. And that does mean living a different way on the main stage. So your real battle comes to how you live your life in your truth, because there's a lot of things that are coming to us, like we were just talking about before the show, like certain things, tyrannical regimes in all of our nations, because I think it's coming to play for all of us, no matter where you live. There are different ways it's coming to play, but it's coming to play, and it's up to us to stand against it, to stand firm in our own truth and sovereignty, to just know that we can heal and find and deal with everything from within with the Christ light, but that also births from within as well.
Yeah, and you're right. And that's the thing, isn't it? What we're seeing play out is the demiurge. And that's what that thread was kind of saying, that the more we can embody the Christ light, that is the antithesis of what's going on. So we can look at it on a really physical level, like tyrannical governments and making you give up your DNA, because that's what we were having a chat about, weren't we, in the UK? All of these things that are methods of control that are really rigid, structured control systems. And that's what it's asking you to leave. But like you said, Dyanna, we hold this within us, and whatever is playing out on the world stage that we're aware of, because obviously we're not aware of everything, depends what's in our purview and our sphere of awareness, basically our reality that we're creating. It's all showing us what we need to get rid of to bring in more of that light.
100%. And I would say the tyranny has always been happening, at least for as long as recorded history is. The difference is, and I think it's just getting more dramatic so that we can truly see it, because they were subtly doing it before, but now they are making it very, very dramatic. So let's dive
Yeah,
into our next one. And this one I like because it actually seems like that's real ancient art there, which the art was the way they got through such deep, 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 more like occult messages. Or the
yeah,
AI just did a really good job. But I vibration in the stillness of eternity, the Ensof, the unmanifested source of all. John 1:1 states, in the beginning was the Logos, and the Logos was with God, and the Logos was God. The Logos turned sound into structure, which we know that literally is how everything works. You've seen those sound, like the sand on the sound machine, and how it makes different shapes depending on the sound. We scientifically know sound indeed makes physicality. So the Logos turned sound into structure, fire into form, the divine harmonic that turned formless light into a patterned creation. So Christ is the solar logos manifested, the activation key to transcend the demiurge's false reality. So all that tyrannical regime we were dealing with before was always there. We know this, and we talked about it like it was history. It was never history. It never left us. We were always in tyranny. It's why they sheepled us out with school systems, work systems, 9 to 5 life, how long school is. It's all to keep us unaware of the tyranny we were already living within. So the
yeah,
signal that eternally pierces through the veils of illusion, the revealer of the counterfeit nature of the material reality, is what Christ, the solar logo, is logos. And what are your thoughts there, Samantha? I like logo
yeah.
as
There was
well,
a,
though.
yeah, like guess it. I think that is. It's like, what is the purpose? That's what it's asking personally. So we're trapped in this. Or apparently we're trapped in this demiurgic um realm, but also there's the fallen Sophia, if you're looking at it from the Gnostic principle, which is pure unmanifest creation, or the void, in physical form, essentially. So it's like the condensed matter of potential creation. And when we were talking about before, that kind of God being the, oh gosh, the, go on, I forgot, there's the oversoul, and then there's the, what's the other one
The
called?
monadic soul?
The monadic soul. So you've got the monadic soul, the oversoul, and the oversoul splits from the central monadic soul, which is essentially the sphere, if we think about it, because it's the unmanifested pure primal potential, into individuation, and it sees itself in contrast of the unmanifest and the manifest, which then goes into the third state, which is this logos, this sound, this creational state between the two. And that's what I think it's kind of saying, you know. It's like the Trinity, isn't it? It's the Holy Spirit, almost the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. But there's obviously I think if you were to condense that down further, you looking at the feminine and masculine principles, essentially, if that makes sense. And I think that's what's playing out. It's the feminine and masculine polarity, and that's what's holding us in this space, is the polarity. And finding the unification point, or the word of God, which is a pure, unlimited, heart-centered creation going forward. That's how we go past it.
100%. And that's exactly why they distorted the female masculine, was because it throws us out of alignment. Because each and every one of us, whether born male or female, has an equal amount of that energy within us. But when they distort it and twist it all up and tell you all these different things, and they've been twisting it for a long, they've turned extra nefarious with it now, because they
Yeah.
saw that we were aligning. They saw the ascension coming, and they were literally going like, what is the most way we could pervert this? Because naturally a shaman does wonders alive with, and with all these children coming in, born star seeds, born shamans, that would naturally have this energy. They're literally like, let's tell them they're the other one. Let's tell them you could switch. Let's tell them they made a mistake in their body. No, the body you're given is, like you said, divinely given from the oversoul as part of the whole monadic structure plan. what you're given as your body is your mission in this life. However you want to dig it out, however you want to live it. It doesn't mean you need to get into gender stereotypes, because that was also part of the twisting. Anybody can do whatever their soul calls them to do. Like the Bible itself says, women should not talk in church or they'll disgrace themselves. Well, here I am trying to create a church because I disagree strongly. It was just yet another way they would seed stuff in to twist us up. Like they took the overall Bible, and it is filled with wonderful information, but they also put in a lot of twisted stuff. And I even found that in the Gnostic Gospels. That's why I abandoned them. Like there was parts where, oh, how could Mary go to heaven? She's a woman. And Jesus says, oh, don't worry, I'll make her a man.
What?
No, because the all of the all is both. It's both. It's the all.
Yeah, it transcends the polarity, which is the point, isn't it? But I mean, what the polarity is actually showing us, it's the unmanifest potential and the manifest potential. It's just condensed down into physicality, you know? And that's what I was kind of getting at with the Sophia. So is she really fallen? Or are we just seeing a broken, fractalized structure? Because we talk about sound, don't we? We want cymatics. Even the words that we speak, everything that we're putting out. I even think that thought is sound, and we can project that out. And it makes this fractal structure, like you said, when you look at the sand and things. So are we just perceiving a broken fractal of reality? Is that what's been hijacked? And underneath it, there's this pure divine essence of creation that's just waiting to be tapped in. And I think that's another thing with the Christ light as well, that this solar logos. He does go on to speak about like the feminine principle and the moon, and it goes a bit more esoteric. But essentially, it's this yin and yang, isn't it? It's the complementing of the chaos and the order. And what the Christ light is basically doing is bringing the balance point to Sophia. And I think that's the thing with the masculine and the feminine. If we can embody both, we're in balance. But we're also aligning with our natural structures, which is the Mother Earth, and then that creation and energy. And I think that is how we bring that balance point of the ascension process.
Yeah, 100%. And I do not buy into any of the actual Gnostic stories as any kind of a literal canon. Just like all the parables of Jesus, they were like energetic things to bring through to us. I think the only sin of women is that females are more naive. They are more naive. And we want to help and be there for like our men. Like we care, we're compassionate, we want to take care. So the narrative's starting to come through, because we know in Atlantis we were a matriarchy. We know when Egypt started it was a matriarchy, because it was, and I believe this, you can believe as you please, but it was what do you call them? Like a suburb, not a suburb, but like a colony of Atlantis. So when Atlantis fell and was removed, Egypt survived, and I think there might have been other ones that survived as well. But Egypt was the biggest, strongest standing, that lasted for the longest period of time. And you can literally, to this day, and you can literally watch history unfold as it switches more and more and more to a patriarchy, and then it disintegrates. And now the actual land of Egypt surrounding the pyramids is kind of a horror show. Like it's not safe. My sister's been there. Like it's not safe. She didn't even have a good time because it was so kind of scary to be there as a female, because that's just how perverted they got the whole system. So when we hear about Sophia making this demiurge and this artificial programming that's in and on the system, we have to just unpack it and look at what I liked what you said about it being an AI system. I completely agree with that. Do I agree that a female made it accidentally? I don't know, because higher spirits always change around, even in the Zeus characters, the Greek and the Roman gods, the Nordic gods, they're always changing around their exact character of who they are. So it makes it very malleable on what exactly could have happened. And what I think it is the creation story of the actual human, and that God itself wanted to feel not like God. It didn't want to know it was God. It wanted to experience a life where it did not know it was God. And that was the peak separation. And that turned out to be you could call it a bad idea to us, to the ones that were separated, but to actual God, the all of the all, the one that had this ultimate plan of separation, they might be pleased because they got that experience. They got to live out that pure separation, which was horrible, but we did not know we were God. And it might have just had to go through great lengths for that to happen. So, regardless of how and then I think our egos itself created a massive egregore that could indeed be the demiurge, that it created this. And because we know that if you get an egregore powerful enough, it can break off and become its own being. Like each and every one of the gods, each and every character we make fourth dimensionally, including the characters we write ourselves, or Harry Potter, anything you want to think about. You give it enough mind power, I bet you $1,000,000 Harry Potter actually exists now, because it's been given so much collective mind power. And Voldemort and all those main characters, just like the Greek gods, because those were their characters in the story once upon a time. So likewise, the demiurge, this character becomes a character that actually starts to infect us, but then we see how it's all coming from the self in its truest core nature.
Yeah, I mean that's a really there was a lot of points that you touched on there. I mean, the first one is what is the demiurge essentially, other than a big mirror for us, because it's our antithesis, isn't it? It's the antithesis. It's the chaos. It's the consuming force, and we are the receiving force because we're literally connected in divinely to God. We've got that God spark, like you said, into it's infinite creation. And the thing that kind of trips me up a little bit is this consuming nature. So I think humans, and this is obviously my opinion, our true divine nature is that we do not actually need to consume. It's just that we are trapped in this physical existence. Not trapped, we're experiencing this physical existence. And I think part of unpicking that is looking at how we can self-sustain ourselves with this energy, this Christ light. I think that's another part of it as well. It's being so linked in to this good force and remembering who we are, that we're able to just create at will, and we don't need to consume the life force of other people. And that's kind of why I think this is a structure that's kind of put the blinkers on us. I don't know if underneath there's an organic structure that is potentially more in line. It's more fractal in nature. So I think it's the condensed version that we're experiencing now, the physicality of the inversion, what creation actually is. It's the counterpart. But like you said, we needed to come and experience this is actually doing as a service, because you can always, whatever's bad, you can always find a good in it, can't you? To know ourselves further, to come and experience what's ice cream, what's suffering, what's marriage, what's childbirth, I mean, that's a whole different thing we could go down as well. It's been inverted. But I think it's the contrast of knowing who we are. And without that, I think a lot of people are like, oh, if we were born and we've never had any suffering or anything, who would we be? There'd be nothing to show you who you're not. I think, and that's really how you figure out. It's like the same thing with jobs. If you can't figure out what you want to do, so you do those jobs that you don't want to do until you realize, actually, that's not what I want to do. That's not what, and it's a process of elimination almost, isn't it?
100%. Yeah, that's exactly it. Like you could see the last thousands of years being like, this is not how we want to play it out. This is definitely not what we want. This is what we don't want. And we need to actually start knowing what we want, because when it comes to manifestation, you are going to manifest whatever your heart and mind are aligned with. But people don't often realize that your heart can hate. Hate and love come from the heart. Your heart
Yeah.
can be negative as well. It doesn't have to be, and it doesn't necessarily want to be, but it can. And especially when it comes to things like fear, and then you get to an overarching story where there's the demiurge, which is most likely Saturn, and then Kronos. You hear that name, time itself. And I think that's where it comes in as a bad guy. And then it gets really warped and twisted. But because time itself was the bad guy, just time, because we were these star creatures that could do whatever we wanted, manifest whatever we want like that in no time and space. And then there would have been different variables of how we lived that. But we can guarantee that time was way more flexible. To make physicality, you had to make everything extremely dense. And to make that dense, it required time. These are all just the scientific ingredients to what magically created us. And that time itself and put on our lives made fear a predominant factor. It made fear a loosh source. It made other entities flood down to us because they're like, yo, guys, there's a feast here. And then they started getting on board because I think it might have started on our own, or at least with very little tinkering. But over the thousands of years that this has been happening, some say hundreds of thousands of years, some say the true fall was 300,000 years ago, where these beings just came and slowly but surely introduced us into things like fear, for all the varied reasons that it comes about, things like lust, a lot of the deadly sins, because we became a food source. And then that's all that anybody cared that we were. And even us ourselves were so stuck and lost in the fear that we forgot about our true manifestation powers. We were accidentally manifesting as creator beings all these things for these other things that were just creating systems that kept us in fear and control because it kept us a food source. A lot of the evil that goes on today, and even humans that think they're doing it for power and money, are secretly, whether they know it or not, they probably a lot. I think it's varied. I think some know and some don't, working for other entities to create a food source. It's as simple as that. Just like what we do, and we show it ourselves in factory farming. We ourselves are living out that narrative in factory farming and the horrible way that we treat the animals en masse. Think about how much beef goes out to the world. And some people want to say it's fake, and I've heard that narrative. Unfortunately, that's actually the better answer. The truth is, no, that many cows are just being horrifically tortured. And cows, something that another religion, a beautiful religion I deeply love, the Hindu, they revere the cow. They love the cow. The cow is worshipped. And here we are completely torturing and killing it just so we have a food source. But are we evil? Not necessarily. We're just doing it for food and we think we're better than the cow. That's exactly what these entities do to us. They keep us in our own factory farm system. You can think of the 15-minute cities they want to create as factory farming, and all the things they've all been put in place to make us a true creator being, create for them, produce for them. When in truth, if we come into alignment with that Christ aligned energy, that pure of pure source, we start feeding ourselves. We start feeding ourselves with that energy. And eventually that's when we get to the places that we've heard of where we evolve past needing to even eat meat and eventually even to eat food at all, because plants are alive too. Plants scream in pain. They've tested this. Plants feel pain too. So, and they feel love. So we get into the Christ light, we get into that energy, we get our DNA on board. So we evolve, and give it another 1,000 years, which is the trajectory from 2,000 to 3,000. We are supposed to, by 3,000, be golden light beings that don't need to eat food and be completely ascended.
Yeah, amazing points there. You summed that up beautifully. I just want to touch on this time thing. Yeah, Chronos. I think, like we were talking about, there's lots of deities and there's lots of ways that it's, we could say Saturn, all that kind of stuff. It's just a concept of how we attribute what we're experiencing to the higher wisdom. And it's actually the expression of archetypes and the wisdom and the characteristics that go with each one, because obviously we don't just see it in physicality. There's a broader spectrum of how those archetypes play out, how they are embodied within, because we're in a magic nature basically, aren't we? It's this is what it is. We're all living magic. The fact that we're living and breathing now, it is a form of magic. And I think what I'm trying to get at really is we condense down, and it's this time loop, I think, in my own opinion, obviously, I can't prove this, but what I've kind of come to realize is we're in this reoccurring loop, and we talk about the yuga cycles. And I think time isn't actually what we've been told. Even when we're experiencing, as we're probably moving further along and the density is becoming less dense, as we're all probably finding, time isn't as constricted and as kind of permanent as we thought it was. You know, it's becoming more and more malleable. I think the more aware and open and enlightened we're getting, and the whole point of that, I think, was to keep us trapped in these like yuga cycles. But like we all know, things aren't necessarily just cyclical, they just appear that way. It's actually a spiral, because that's the geometry of it. And we're spiraling up. And I think what's actually happening is we're going round and round these spirals. And the perception that we have of the time condensed within the spiral seems like it's eons, but actually it's not, you know? So this is kind of where I am with that at the moment, and I think we're going up to the next level, which is Ascension, essentially, onto a higher plane of existence, a higher awareness, but still in physicality, still with some concept of matter and time.
I agree completely. Yes. And especially when you like from the higher to the lower. So as we get lower in density, time is more real. And as we go higher in density, we experience that time is more choosable. And sometimes we don't always feel like we have control over it, but at the same time, we felt ourselves in a different frequency when time was moving differently. And likewise, as we move up, it's going to continue to do that. And as we live, there's beings that now interact with us that don't have the same perceptions of time, that don't exist in time the way we do.
Yeah. Oh, we've lost you again, Dyanna.
There's no internet, so you have to like play Minecraft if you want, and I take it and
Dyanna.
I took my jam to as a moment to grab the tablet.
It's all right, don't worry.
um
It's part of that. What were you saying? Oh, God.
that it is time itself is not real. So completely agree. It's a perception to us as a form of our density that creates us that does make us more real in a sense. That's why we feel real in a way.
Yeah.
And as we get more awakened and ascended, you notice you start to feel less real. We can get really disembodied and feel like I don't feel so real anymore. Like I certainly don't. Like it's easy. They say you should treat life as a game and a story, and I certainly do because I literally quite often do not feel real, but in a good way, in a pleasant way. If one cannot feel real pleasantly.
Yeah. I think what it is, it's the perception of what we're seeing at the moment is starting to disintegrate. I mean, I've seen for quite a long time, and I know you've had the same, where I look at things and they don't seem to be quite solid anymore, and it's just become the normal. But I think again, this is applied to this. It's like a fishbowl that we've been squeezed into, that's just got this perception of time within it that we're all kind of sharing. And it is literally it's the force of time that makes things look dense, because if there wasn't any time, there wouldn't be we wouldn't have that laser pinpoint precision view of consciousness, because that's all it's doing. When it comes through the lens of time, it's literally just condensing the point of our consciousness so we can see it as it moves, it's condensing it down. And that's what matter is. That's what this table is. That's what, this phone is in front of me, because outside of that, that doesn't exist. It's just to give us the contrast. And that's where the duality comes in, I believe.
I like what you said there too. I want to emphasize that. Like, so we can see it as we move, so we can see it.
Mm-hmm.
That means something because there's something more solid in this nature that just makes being a human feel so serious. And all of us that have talked to our higher beings, a lot of us talk to the Pleiadians, they laugh at us because they're like, oh, you're so serious. Like, this isn't real. Like, you're so serious. Like they're valley girls or something. Cause like they just don't, they honor and they try to help and they're here and they're trying to teach us because likewise it benefits them. If we're in balance, it's going to help them in their next part of the ascension. But the fact that we are not as serious as we think is very true, and we're going to open up to realize that deeper and deeper. So to understand Christ, we must understand his contrast, the demiurge. And the false god Yaldabaoth, Saturn, Kronos, Jehovah, who rules this world through law, guilt, hierarchy, and limitations. The demiurge is better understood as a hyperdimensional AI, and I liked that because I agree. A recursive logic structure that loops identity and distorts memory. So, recursive means improving constantly for the better. So I don't know if I believe that, but if that's true, that means it can constantly improve and make itself better,
Mm.
and distorts memory. So I don't.
Do you think he means it's looping rather than?
Yeah, because a
improving.
lot of people think recursive just means loop, but recursive is literally a spiral up where you are doing a loop, but you get a little better. You get, or like the fractaling, but it's always getting better. It's always getting better.
More
And
just, yeah.
exactly, yeah. And distorts memory. So the logo speaks in parables, paradox, and poetry. And I liked this part because it's true. The
Mhm.
demiurge speaks in commands: thou shalt not. One liberates through mystery, the other imprisons through certainty. Christ may Christ made it clear this kingdom is not of this his kingdom is not of this world. And it's true, it's a higher layer of our reality. And I love this image true too. The both trees. I was very into Kabbalah once upon a time. Ashiana Dean has expanded that, and that felt true. It's not
Yeah.
like I blindly believe people, but even when I was learning, it does it because everything's 12s, right? Everything's 12s. So having a 10 Sephiroth tree just felt limited. And then we knew there was Dot in the secret realm, which they have their little star there showing Dot. But there's more than that. And there was even an extra one that Ashiana added. And then the three extra make 15. And I've always still felt resonance to the number 15 the day of my birth. But I couldn't explain it. So the world of flesh is an illusion, a demiurgic construct ruled by time. The crucifixion was a breach through the demiurge. I think they mean breach. Was a breach through the demiurge's firewall, a conscious descent into the underworld, Sheol Hades. I probably said that word wrong. A systematic breach of the false paradigm. And what are your thoughts with that?
Yeah, I think it was just touching again on this false layer of reality that we're experiencing. I think I don't like the idea though that we're trapped here. That
Mm-mm.
doesn't, it's
I don't
never
agree.
gelled with me. Yeah,
Mm-mm.
like I do like the Gnostic view of certain things, but the fact that because I mean I know you and Stephen's spoken about this before. Um, it's like everything that's real is somehow tainted or wrong, but I don't necessarily think that's right. Literally just because everything that's in creation is made or touched by God, even if it's through the lens of the demiurge, obviously from the Gnostic tradition. So I think it's trying to unify and rectify within ourselves the disparity between good and evil, essentially, or our perceptions of it. So this is another thing that I do want to come down to, because a lot of things, how we view reality, um, is literally subjective to our own experience. You know, what family were we born in? What views and ideals have we got? What karma have we got? Um, how has our soul developed through the many lifetimes and experiences that it's had? And it all shapes this idea of what is good and what is bad. And actually, nothing is good and nothing is bad. It's just experience, even though it's horrible, some of the stuff, and you really don't want to, you wouldn't do it. You wouldn't perpetuate that because that isn't what you're moving towards, because you're moving up the cycle back to God. And God is obviously love and pure unity. But to experience this kind of disconnect, I think it's still divine. We have to have it. It's all part and parcel of knowing deeper love. Because like you said, love and it's not even hate, it's fear, isn't it? It's the opposite of love. But all those emotions that we hold within our hearts, they're just all part of the same stick, because the stick is experience. And you have to have, for the greater amount of pain that you've had, you are also able on the opposite side to have the greater amount of love. And I think it's just reconciling those things. And that's really what I think propels us through that, glass. I'm going to call it glass ceiling, but that's not quite right. We'll call it this outer bubble, this amniotic membrane, because it's almost a womb. And that's kind of what I've been showing. This reality that we're in now is almost, yeah, it is. It's like we're in the umbilicus. Like, we're connected to the umbilicus, to this thread back to God, and we'll never lose that connection, but we're being grown into actual living, breathing gods, essentially.
That's very interesting because this morning I shared with you all the vision of because we know we have the one umbilical cord, that the astral one. This was a separate one, and it showed it as black going through the root into the black hole sun in the middle of the earth. And what was even extra interesting, because we know that through like meditation practices, but what was extra interesting is it started to show it phase shifting. And I literally was like communicating with this thought going, okay, so it's like a separate earth for everyone, because I've wondered such things. And it said no, it's because it would phase, and like my cord was here and then it would phase, it shows someone else's cord over here, but mine would be gone. Like it was phase shifting. Each person is only one individuated person attached in to the inner sun with that umbilical cord coming out the root. And this is our specifically to our attachment with earth, but it just shows that no, earth is that complicated. It phase shifts for each of our realities to like a micro degree, showing why we are each the maker of our own reality. And once we move so far past something, you will completely shift out and not see that as part of your reality anymore. This is again how you can manifest and things like that. But like we have these etheric chords, and this one's different than the one you were mentioning, but it's just interesting because we see this, and I was given this image just today to show that like the variance in these stories is why we can't have dogma and why we can't have religion, because there is so much more for us to learn right now, that if we nail ourselves, if we pigeonhole ourselves in anywhere, if we pigeonhole ourselves in any one way, shape, or form, even the vision that I saw this morning, does that mean how it's literally true? Not at all. That's just, they will show us imagery and tell us stories to try to convey to us the extremely complex way that we actually work in this world. And again, why you want to come back to that Christ thing, because the one thing I found through my whole large journey is the one thing that doesn't change is Christ. Christ is this overarching light of pure peace and love and bliss, but in a very safe and secure energy that just never changes. It just is the stable force that we can always count on and rely on.
Yeah, absolutely. I liked what you were talking about, this dark umbilicus, because when you look at the shamanic tradition, the dark is actually full of light. It's just a different kind of emanation of the light. And when we go into this rich, deep soil of the earth, or you want to call it the black hole sun, which is within it, I see it as like this kind of like crystalline octahedron. But essentially, that's what it is. When we bury, if you bury yourself shamanically in the earth, it's you're going back into the rich, fertile soil. You're dying, you're decaying to be reborn. And that's what I kind of like about the tree, the tree of life and the tree of death. And again, this disparity, you need both. And it really feels like that's what we're hooked in to the heart of the earth. But the thing is, the earth's also ascending up the same spiral, this recursive spiral, these time spirals, these time cycles. And I really feel like we're shifting out of the lower densities now. And we're reaching this point where it's not just, oh, we're going to have a small phase where we're all right, and then we're going to go back to dark ages. I feel like we've left that behind. We've done that tight, contained, dark, dense cycle on the wheel, and we're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And we're about ready now to be rebirthed into this kind of, like you said, that pure Christ light. I feel like we're going to be able to hold that more, because I believe that's also part of what's in the earth. It's just expressed as its opposite. But we still need that. It's the death and decay which breeds the new life, essentially. Oh, you muted, my love.
Yes, I think 100% exactly. And I think if we do end up seeing a split, because I don't know if that's just one of the stories I just really want. So I'm biased because I really want that. It seems the easiest if we just split from the lowers, because sometimes, it's hard for us to wrap our head around about how certain people are going to awaken and ascend. And you don't necessarily want everyone to exit like a lot have been. It'd be better if we split. And so I can like scientifically, metaphysically see how if enough of us do that phase shifting up, and like even if like etherically, like I saw, we each have our own cords plugging in, but if enough of us are plugged into her and phasing up, it's almost like, well, what the cell does. What does a cell do? when it has the energy, it splits and now it's two different cells. So literally you can see how that would happen. And the energy that's working the one way, you could even call it negative positive, the energy that's working the one way is going to go on the one side of the split, and the energy that's working towards the other way is going to go on the other side of the split. And you can really see how that could play out. And I know it's going to look fantastic, and we're probably not even going to notice that it happens. If it does, we wouldn't even notice, because that's just how it always happens. The most biggest magical things that do end up happening, we don't even get to really see it. It's happening on a higher level than us.
Yeah, I think you're right. I like what you were talking about, this phase look, how we all kind of like shift and then sink again. I don't think anybody's ever going to be lost, because why would good create um itself, send itself out to be completely lost forever? I can't understand that. I don't feel like that makes sense. Um, so I feel like maybe we get lost to experience that, and maybe it's very unpleasant. But ultimately, we're all folded back into what essentially is source at the end of the day, because it's pure love. Pure love isn't going to abandon us. It's not going to send us out somewhere and never give us a lifeline home. You know? I don't know if you're frozen, Diana. Did you
I
hear
did
that?
freeze. I did freeze.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just saying it's never going to abandon us without. It's not going to check us out and just abandon us. I can't see that. I can't
I
reconcile
don't think
within
it's
me.
possible. I agree, because I don't think it's possible. It's the all of the all. Like, even if you sat on your hand and it went numb, and let's say, uh, like, I used to love the movie Idle Hand, and it went and did some things and it turned evil and it was all kinds of things. That hand is still your hand. Like, it's never not your hand, even if it's possessed or whatever the things you might call it, because in the totality of the all, it's all the all. So even if it goes evil, it has to return back through those love realms, because the separation narratives, as far as we've been told, but I do seem to believe it, because it's a better thing to believe, but it just also makes sense. And that's that, like the law of one mentions this and a lot of other material, but that you can only go to fifth or sixth density with being separated, because it's just the illusion of separation. But with being separated, or in an evil service to self timeline, you can only go so high. And you could see that on the tree of life. Both sides of the pillar, you max out. In the middle, up through Kether, is how you get to Ensof and Ensof, or you have to continue up higher and higher, and you can only do that through the middle. But regardless, even if God decided to shut everything down today and restart reality, all the evil would just instantly turn to dust, the same as us, and go back into the same pile, just like us. It's all coming from the same source, and it's just living out different scripts. And then people get, oh, so God wants to be evil? Yeah, but not as much as he wants to be good. He wants to experience it all, because the true joy comes from contrast. And we can all see that ourselves. It's why people like extreme workouts. We love extreme. So why would God be any different?
Yeah, exactly. And you know, the further away you get, it's like the separation is it, the more painful it is. But you have to do that to experience the other, and that's what the splitting off was. You know, we talked about before, this trinity. You know, this monadic structure, then the oversoul, and then this logos, which is like the triangle of knowing itself and the creation. It couldn't do that without the separation. And that's the same thing when we talk about the divine masculine and the divine feminine. It's you've got to go through this separation to come back together, you know? And I think this is part of the reason why it's all being inverted, because we need to truly know ourselves. So me as a physical woman, you as a physical woman, a man as a physical man, to physically know what a man is, and then to integrate that, but to also find the balance of their feminine polarity within themselves. They're then able to show up and have this union with their, you know, man or woman, the opposite, and bring about this life. And I think that's how we're meant to do it, really, you know? Oh, she's gone again.
I'm back.
Oh, she's back on.
But yes, no, I was completely agreeing with everything you're saying. And that is what it comes down to. And this is why they do say that the universe is not a personal universe. It's not out to get you. It is you. And it's just doing all these things. Okay, because I was a writer. I am a writer. And you write horrible things for your characters. And I know how the fourth dimension works. But I still write my story with my characters going through horrible situations because that's how a story is made. Otherwise, it's flat. Otherwise, you're not living. Otherwise, it's not interesting. Otherwise, no one wants to like get involved. We love the drama. We do. We are dramatic beings. That's why the Zeus characters, oh my God, so ridiculously dramatic. Everything in Greece back in that time was so dramatic. Even the real life people, they were in the Athenian times, Athens, they were living quite dramatic lives. It was quite the show just in their own regular life. But that's because it was a very spiritual time as well. And the story never dropped. Carl Jung brought us that information with the archetypes and trying to convey to us the importance of knowing your archetypes, and because then you know your story. Then you know your motivation. If you're always like, why do I always keep doing this thing? Then it could come from upbringing and past life stuff, but that goes into making your archetypes. Some of our archetypes are malleable.
We've lost you again, Dyanna. You've gone. Yeah, the archetypes. I think you made a really good point with that, to be honest. I kind of see the archetypes as these templates. Sorry, Diana, you're back. What were you saying, my love?
Yeah, but I like that word templates because, yes, these archetypes, they are a part of our story. And like in occult philosophies, we have a full 22 set that we have to go through and live. And then that bridges into a 24. And we know the number 24 matters deeply. And this is why tarot can be helpful because it helps you dig out that stuff because it's designed on that system, especially the Rider Waite, because they knew all their Hermetic occult knowledge and they were putting that into that. If you're using it in that way to digest and unpack your actual archetypes because they matter so deeply into this human story that we are living to live it out correctly. But or correctly, there's no.
Oh, we've lost you again, my love. Yeah, there is no correctly because each person's journey is correct for where they are. And that's why we can't compare and contrast really to somebody else. We're never in competition, we're doing our own thing. And I think that's true for how we embody the archetypes, because they are a template essentially. They're the foundation of the whole human experience. And we look at the collective unconsciousness, and what they are essentially is fractalized, I'm going to say, geometry that we can pull down. And because of this geometry, and because again we're in dualism, how we apply the polarity of each archetype will depend on how it sits within us. I had an experience recently where I was in kind of a trance, and I was shown all these different archetypes, and they were basically burned into my psyche essentially, but they were whole. So what I was told was that a lot of these archetypes that we are embodying, they're distortions of what they actually are. And I think that's the issue. Again, coming through this lens, they become distorted. They're not in their true form. And it's finding that perfect template on how to express it within our own individuated lives, because it's going to look different for everybody. And essentially what the archetypes are to me is this beautiful paint palette that we can dip into to paint, the scenery of our own lives. And that's part of, being sovereign, taking control. How are we going to utilize, the mother energy, the father energy, all of that, the hermit? Do we need to go away and rest? And there's pros and cons for each side of it, but it's how we express it in our physical existence.
Yeah, 100%. And there's always the optimal way to deal with any of our variables and the detrimental way to deal with our variables. They were always given the both to choose between laying out. And then there's also trying to overcome all your archetypes, which I know is one of the narratives. Like if you transcend past it all, and that would bring you into the Christ does transcend past all of the archetypes. So on our next thing here, we have a match thrown
Yeah.
into the darkness to ignite the light within. The resurrection laid out the blueprint, an escape plan, the birth of the solar body, and the lunar control. The diamond body, the Merkaba, that is able to transcend the cycles of reincarnation and entropy, which is funny enough, that's exactly how they say we finish out this life, is going through all of the archetypes and living them to their fullest and checking all the boxes that they require. That's actually how you escape in occult philosophy. That's how you, especially Hermetics, how you escape this constant reincarnation cycle is learning and knowing all of the archetypes and living them all fully out. I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm just saying that's definitely something I learned from Teresa Bullard. She's on Gaia. I love her, and that's
Yeah,
actually Sarah's show is taking over from Teresa. So that is so synchronistic because I knew Teresa first. So that's just mind
that's
blowing.
amazing. I mean, I did want to just touch on something with that. So when you were talking about the archetypes and the Christ light, if we think about the Christ light being like white light, it's actually golden, is it? But it's an amalgamation. And if we think of each of the archetypes of being a colour that's split out when we put it through the prism of life, each one has its own individual stream. And I think that's what you're very right. I think it's bringing them all back into that unified field, because that's what the Christos Ascension, I'm going to call it a story, but it's not, is all about, really, isn't it? It's bringing back into unity all the different aspects of the human psyche and the human condition and how we're expressing ourselves and finding that oneness. So it's bringing it down. So it's the one half of the Merkaba and then the other bit which is coming up and bringing it into the heart. And that's what that diamond light is for me. It's the same sort of thing. You know, we talk about the rainbow light body. It's finding the perfect balance within the heart center, because that's the center of our being. And I really feel like that is the way that we essentially do that. We ascend out.
Yes, exactly. 100%. Yeah, I like that too, ascend out. Yes, because that's part of like, because there's two different ways you can look at ascension. There's ascending to live on earth as a better human in a utopian world, and then there's ascending out and leaving being physical whatsoever and returning to whatever we were doing before, which a lot of star seeds feel themselves as doing different things, higher realms. And it's why we can be so, there's definitely something up with our soul that you can say 100%. Like we talk about star seeds, but the actual science behind that, it's that we are a bigger vessel, like a bigger energetic vessel stuffed into a tinier box. That's one of the theories. Or we're more recently from somewhere else and not from Earth recently. Though some of us have memories of past lives here, but I find like a lot of us, and I don't know if that's just the way it goes with the mind, a lot of us don't have recent memories here. A lot of us have really old memories here, meaning we weren't here for a long time. And then it could be both. It could be both. We weren't here for a long time and our energetic body is bigger and stuffing it into this vessel. It's just more, we just feel it. Like both of us have talked about having fibromyalgia. And I think
I've lost you again, Dyanna. Yeah, the fibromyalgia. I think what you were going to say is because we're being condensed in, and we're so big, and we're having to be shoved into this physical vessel. I do think that part of the process, and we spoke about ascending out, is that we're just finding the method in which to travel, because we're essentially part of this consciousness that we're in now. So I'll stop talking in a minute.
no, keep going, keep going, keep going. That sounds
Yeah,
good.
so essentially we're part of this consciousness, and but we're linked into all these other steps, and it's almost like an inversion of the tree itself, because it's obviously as above so below, that's coming down from the monadic structure. It's like the roots of the tree, and it's the inversion, because we're spreading up and that's coming down, but it's actually our consciousness. So as we align the physical vessel, we're able to consciously go out, which is out of the body, out of physicality, and experience different dimensions. But we're also able to come back in. So it isn't that we're trying to bypass the physical reality. It's just that we gain mastery over it. And I think that's essentially what we're meant to be doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. Yes, I definitely agree with that. And there's always so many variables to look at, but we do know some truths, and that's definitely one of them.
We look at
Um,
Thoth, don't we? And he was the same sort of thing. He spoke about gaining that mastery and moving between the angles, you know?
yes, and I liked that download you had there about the angles that was just amazing about and you can just see that as the way we emanate, and it's coming from all these different sources. You can even look at archetypes as a part of the angle system, and how we like emanate through all these different varied streams coming in that come into this one person. This is why I often think like the whole they narrative, well, that's kind of funny because we are kind of theys. I definitely feel like a they because I can feel, once you kind of get over the ego, you can kind of look around and go like, I'm not alone in here. Like, there is the one true self, the watcher, but it's kind of silent. All the thoughts and the things coming through us from all these different varied angles all have their own opinions. So you could like want something and have so many different opinions on it, and so many different, well, you can learn to work together as a system. And again, alignment will definitely solve that. So the Christ code is as follows. The crucifixion is the crossing of worlds, the firing of the soul through the Saturnian gate. The resurrection is the jailbreak from the death loop, ascension beyond the lunar net. The ascension is the return to the pleroma, which, if you don't know Gnosticism, pleroma is basically the heaven realm that we fell from. The source realm beyond the false light. Christ is not a passive lamb, but a roaring lion. The solar key that locks, that the locks of the demiurgic system, key that breaks the locks of the demiurgic system. Christ is the adversary of the archons. He reveals their tyranny and teaches the secret to escape. In the Gospel of Thomas and the sacred Gospel of John, Christ teaches the key to transcendence. Light must enter the womb. And I love this image. It totally is a vagina. Light must enter the womb to be born in the world. The Logos must merge with the fallen eon, Sophia, the divine feminine, the cosmic womb, the light trapped in matter, the Shekinah trapped in Malkuth. And Christ is solar key. Sophia is the lunar lock. Christ without Sophia is sterile light. Sophia without Christ is lost form. Together they birth the new anthropos, the resurrected human, the logos incarnate. This is the Heros Gamos, which I mention all the time, the sacred union, and it occurs within the awakened soul. Christ doesn't want your worship. He wants you to understand his gnosis. And that brings us to the end of that thread. And absolutely with the Heros Gamos, because that is alignment. That is the middle pillar. And this is where you can get like kind of janky on what Christ is, because Christ is many things. Like, because the golden light that we all see, I would say it's the masculine energy, the solar energy. It is that masculine energy. But then there's something about Christ that feels genderless. It feels like it is the Heros Gamos. It feels like it is the alignment. Just in a gnosis sense, it just does.
Yeah. I kind of feel like the Sophia represented as in opposite to the Christ light is almost like the Magdalene energy. And then Christ light is its opposite. And when it's through that unity that it becomes the Heros Gamos.
Mhm. Like when we're seeing it in its optimal form, it's like we're already seeing it together. And that's where that violet light comes in. Violet is said to be the mix of the both. That's not why my background is violet, and why my usual transcending ascension colors are violet, because violet is the combination. But that's not anything against gold, because there's something so deeply powerful about gold. And we know this earth was mined by extraterrestrials for its gold. We know that gold is one of the most powerful elements there is in actuality. It's why they tricked us all into handing it back. There was this big thing, it still exists a little bit today, but in the 90s, and I think it started in the 80s, where they're like, oh, give us your gold, we'll give you cash, because they were trying to take away all our gold. They realized they sold it to us. I don't want to say too cheap because it was fair, but they didn't want us to have as much gold as we had. So they wanted to take it back, because gold is power. Gold brings about your truest self, and so too does diamonds. This is why now there's diamond stores that just sell your diamonds in shards. It's all little tiny diamond shards that make it up. They don't want us to have solid formed diamonds, and they've inflated the price past what it even should be because they don't want us to have that, because it makes us stronger and firmer, and they naturally create alignment within the self.
Well, that's what they were talking about, that diamond light, and that's what I kind of feel like. I liked what you were saying about the violet light, and but they're all emanations from that diamond light. And I've had psychic downloads about this kind of diamond light before, and I'd not really understood it until I'd gone on this path. And it's kind of the pennies dropping a little bit more with it. And this is what I kind of mean by the Sophia or the Magdalene energy. And it's this, again, it is an archetype, but just like the Christ is an archetype. But when it's combined, that is the diamond light, because it's the upper and the lower. And this is what I feel like, everything's heading towards unity, but it's not unity to lose yourself. It's unity through individuation, which I know sounds a bit backwards, but to fully know yourself, you have to be the opposite of what wholeness is, to then come back and still be part of the all while still retaining your sense of self. Does that make sense?
100%. Yeah, because we come out, we go in, we come out, we go in. The breath. We are always doing that. And every time you come out and come back in, you bring back with you more wisdom. Or sometimes you go out and you let go of stuff. So like there's always that constant changeover process that keeps us moving. Because there's one thing about the earth, even if you're a rock on the ground, the earth does not stand still. You are always changing, you are always moving. I just totally random, but like you can see like in the movie Noah I just watched, which is the same director as the Black Mirror and or sorry, the Black Swan, and it has so much depth that I didn't realize the first time I watched it. Like for example, it shows the beaches and they're black, and then you look close and it's big black rocks and you're like, what? And all the beaches everywhere are like that. And then you realize he's like, sand hasn't been properly created yet because sand is smashed up rocks, and it's just showing just the journey of just simply what the rock takes in time. In time, all everything has a journey, and it always has the breath.
Yeah, I love that. And I loved how you brought it back to the breath, because that's what it is. Breath is life. And that's where we find, that's actually where we find God. I think we talked about this before. You know, we breathe it in, and that it's the point between, and we look at the lemniscat, which is like a figure of 8, and it's the middle point. So the breath in, you find God, the breath out, it's the exoteric felt sense of God, you know, and it's that complete exchange. And that's essentially what you're doing, because that's why the breath's so powerful, because you're literally bringing in that light, that goodness, and it's reconciling the outer and the inner, essentially, or the good and the separation. And I think that's kind of what's happening with that. But yeah, I like what you mentioned about the journey as well, and the sand. And this is the thing, it's a process. And this is kind of what I touched on earlier when I was like, we can't really compare journeys, and we can't assume that another person's path is wrong, because everybody's on their own. Again, back down to individuation and sovereignty, they're on their own path of self-discovery and self-expression, and their experience is just as important as the next person, but it's never going to be the same. And you should never kind of aspire to be exactly like somebody else, because this is the thing, what I really want to impress upon people, because I know we're going to kind of be wrapping it up in a minute, but it's just to be, you know, yourself is important. Yourself is an expression of God. You know, it doesn't matter what you look like, it doesn't matter what society tells you should be like, it doesn't matter how much money you've got in the bank. The only thing that matters is that you are, you know, authentic in what you're doing, and you're finding who you truly are. And to do that, it's going within. And I always say that, and I know I sound like a broken record, but it really is. It's finding out who you are. How do you hold God within you?
Yes, 100%. And I'm a broken record on saying sovereign discernment, because that upped the level for me. And that's from Sarah the Alchemist. Like she taught me this at a level, like you can hear these words and you're just like, yeah, okay. Or you can be like, no, because if all my thoughts and all my actions are not coming from sovereign discernment, then you're automatically in disalignment. Because even if you do something in sovereign discernment and it's wrong, you are still going to truly learn the lessons and get upgraded and integrated, and much magic will happen in sovereign discernment, which is like going inside, because you are living your truth in the world. For better or worse, it's your truth, because you cannot fix the self or heal the world if you are still people pleasing or living in any form of doing something because somebody else wants you to, or society told you you should, or that's what politeness looks like, or that's what, there's so many variables in this world because it has been designed heavily to keep us false. All this, the entire production of technology might simply be, ironically, to stop ascension, because they wanted us powered with stuff to keep us down, stuff to keep us scared, stuff to keep us unaware of the reality of what truth is. Because if you're not living in truth, then you're not really, it's like trying to pretend build a house, but you think you're really building it. You've been handed some imaginary blocks made of marshmallows, but you're told they're wood and you're building your house, and that's not going to work. That's going to melt away when it rains, because it was never real to begin with. You were not building a house for yourself. And Jesus says something similar in the Bible where, build your house of rocks. And then I've even noticed the story of the three little pigs is the same story. You want a solidified house, and you can only have a solidified house if you build it out of your deepest truths, whatever they may be. And they're going to have a million variables specifically to you. And the Christ alignment light in the middle pillar path of living will help you bring out the best parts of your truth, because you have many truths. Some of them aren't great, but you can find that golden light will help eviscerate out the darker parts that you don't want in your life. If you hold that deepest part of the Christ light within you at all points in time as much as possible, just simply going into the witness space, like the witness. If you I'm sure a lot of you have come across those teachings where we are nothing but the witness. The witness is the only thing that is truly us. And the witness kind of has not many no thoughts, really. It has no voice. It does it. It's just, you can just see it watching. But if you get into that complete silent space of the watcher, that brings the God spark alive. That ignites the middle pillar. That is quite likely is coming right through the Christ stream of energy. And it just automatically will brighten up whatever you're doing. If you're arguing with your children, if you're having trouble at work, if you're literally building a house, whatever is happening in your life, especially if it starts to get problematic, because we can live our life happy and great and super ascendant, and I'm so special and I'm so magical if nothing's going wrong. But the second you stub a toe or anything that goes wrong, then the many ways that can happen in life, you want to cancel and nullify it, but at the same time, you want to call on the Christ. Deep breathe it in, turn the heart spark on, become the witness, and just start watching the situation. Live and act in complete sovereign discernment. And if you don't know what that is, do nothing. Wait for the witness to, and it'll give nudges. It doesn't have a voice, but all of a sudden a thought will come into your head and you can just tell, because you have to learn to know thyself. Knowing thyself is so deep and true. And this is why, because if you do not know yourself, you're not living a real life, and your entire life could be a wash. Your entire life could be, if you don't fulfill any of your soul missions, because sovereign discernment is going to take you through your soul missions, your soul life, the things you need to do to progress and advance and ascend. But if you're living in untruth, you're living somebody else's story, you're helping someone else's narrative, you're being a loosh farm. It's just all tons of things you don't want. What you want is your truth, for better or worse, because sometimes there might be hard things you need to become aware of and work through and deal with so that you can get to a better place. But as we're learning, as a lot of us ascending, has anyone reached perfection yet? Has anyone have a life with absolutely no problems yet? No, but you get more mature and more able to handle those problems is what happens. You become a master of reality. Doesn't mean you have complete control over everything all the time, but you can master how you handle it and what you think and how you act.
Beautifully put. I loved that. That was absolutely perfection. Yeah, I loved what you were saying about the witness. And just to elaborate a little bit on that, the witness is the space that we make. So it's the peace when you're silent and you feel the stillness within you. And all you basically what you're getting to is a non-reactionary state. So you can just observe. So people's projections that are coming at you, Betty, come in. Sorry, it's my dog. She's got a squeaky toy. People's projections that are coming at you, you know, we can either choose to see them for what they are. I don't know, you could be in the grocery store and somebody could shout at you for being in the way, anything like that. Your children could do something, they could smear jam all over the walls or whatever. We've all been in there, especially as mums. You can start to take it personally, or you can stop. And it's that conscious stopping where you breathe, like you said, you go into the witness, it's the peace inside, the stillness, and you're then able to bring yourself back into alignment and respond rather than react. So I really loved what you were saying about that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you agreeing. And this was fantastic. And I hope the audience felt like I loved having you here today, Sam. And hopefully we'll be working together more. I'm very excited to have you just, I don't know. I love what we do together. We both have open throats. Sam is a fellow open throater. And hopefully you can feel that magic, because the open throat just does, like, we can wow ourselves on the things that just come through, but like, and resonate with the truth. It's why, like, we learn so that we can see what's coming in and find the truth in it. And right now, the Christ is needing a complete revamp of information, to not throw away the old, but to bring it on with new language information. We have quantum physics now. That's enormous. We have
Yeah,
sound healing now. And then the information that has shown us as part of our reality. Like, we have so much more to work with in this life. So thank you so much for being here today, Samantha. I really
thank
appreciate it.
you. Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure and a privilege.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, audience, for being here this week. And we will see you again next week, same time, 12 o'clock. Hopefully, Dawn and Stephen are on vacation, and hopefully, you guys are having fantastic vacations. And we will see everyone again next week. Thank you so much for being here. Goodbye for now.